building. It's being refitted now. IBM is out of it. Mies died in 1969, but he lived long enough to complete the design of the building and actually to do how the building would be sited on the plot. And the building is everything that Mies is. It's intellectual, it's rigorous, it's serene, it's perfect. And last, the glassy building here, and for people who are taking pictures, much better view when we go out to the lake to turn around. This is a wonderful and subtle building, despite the fact it's named after Donald Trump. It's from 2009. It's the second tallest building in Chicago and currently the 10th tallest building in the world. And it was designed by Adrian Smith. Now moving away from the Art Deco, now moving into very tall buildings, and we'll talk more about that. Who decides what makes a building tall? It's a group called the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat. And look at all of these stories that are to the Trump Tower that are actually below grade, below street. It's because the council said a couple of years ago that you could start counting the floors of buildings at the lowest level of pedestrian access. So this building actually gained, it was built, but it actually gained about 5 floors and became taller than another building simply by sitting there and this kind of sort of change in interpretation. I told you that the Tribune was printed over on the other side of the river but composed here at this part of the river, and that's the building on the left that's just emerging. It's flying the flag. It has a very, very busy top there. That's the Tribune Tower. Its design is the result of an international competition which was won by the architects Hood and Howells from New York. The building went up in 1925. The elbow type elements that you see on there, those are called flying buttresses, and it's done in a pseudo-Gothic style. All that rigmarole on the top of the building is there just to add to the theatricality of the building. It's not doing a darn thing about making the building stay up. There were a lot of hopes when that went in that we would get a very forward-looking design, but Colonel McCormick loved his fake Gothic, so he owned the building and he got what he wanted. And it fronts out, you'll see this as soon as we're under the bridge, look up to your left, a big open Cumberland Plaza. It's called Pioneer Plaza, and this is the plaza that Colonel McCormick demanded be put in. It sits on the site of the cabin of the first non-Indigenous resident of Chicago, Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, French on his father's side, African by way of Haiti on his mother's side. So the first Chicagoan was an African-American man who founded a dynasty which is kind of capped off today on the person of our current president, Barack Obama, and who have contributed a great deal of vitality here to the civic life in Chicago. Over on the left, University of Chicago, Gleacher Center, 1994 by Dirk Lohan. It's night school, U of C. Look at the side there, this is classrooms, but look, over here, no windows. Well, that's what happens when you allow your client to have input, because the faculty was like, oh, we don't want the students, they need to be looking at me, not out at the river, so 0 windows. And the only windows that you actually do see in there are here in the front, which is where the students have their lounges and other such things. It sits across the street from the last of the Adrian Smith Art Deco buildings. This one probably reminds you a little of Rockefeller Plaza. That would be right. He's kind of paying homage there because it's also the NBC building, and in New York, NBC is in Rockefeller Center. But here, by the way, you see the elbows on it, about 2/3 of the way up. Those are flying buttresses that actually are helping to keep the building up. So they're not there just to contribute to its look. They are there and actually pulling their own weight. On the left, just at the bridge, is a statue by Milton Horn called Chicago Emerging from the Lake. That is one tough woman. She has wheat under one arm and she's wrestling a bowl under the other. So you do not want to tangle with her. The Columbus Drive Bridge went in the mid-1980s when they straightened out a very wicked curve in Lakeshore Drive, which is just in front of us. And all the land that you now see ahead of you on your left was suddenly reclaimed because Lakeshore Drive used to cut it off. Now it was all open. We took a bunch of old and unused, lumber mills and warehouses and such, and we now have River East, which is all of this planned community along in here. On the left, with the rounded corners, is the Sheraton Hotel. It's not the largest hotel in Chicago, but it does have the largest ballroom. So in case any of you would like to have, you know, a significant occasion there, you can invite 5,000 of your closest friends, 4,000 if you want them to sit down, and go to town there in the ballroom. Also, if you want to stay overnight but you feel that your security is threatened, you can ask for the suite that has bulletproof glass, which was put in because Bill Clinton used to like to stay here when he was president, and the Secret Service insisted upon it. Over on the left, again at river level, you'll see flowing water up ahead of us. This is actually an architecturally designed fountain. It was designed by Dirk Lohan again, who happens to be the grandson of Mies van der Rohe. It's called the Parting of the Waters, and when you see it flush up against it, you'll notice that it has the kind of center element, and then one wing of it goes off that way toward the river, and the other one goes off that way toward Lake Michigan. Its correct name from 1989 is the Nicholas J. Millis Memorial Fountain and Water Cannon. What's a water cannon, you ask? Well, look at that pyramid kind of thing right in front. I'm pointing right at it now, that pyramid. At the top of the hour, that shoots a big jet of water which goes into a big arc 85 feet into the air and goes all the way over to the other bank of the river. It does that for 10 minutes at the top of the hour, and you better believe this is why we time the tour the way that we do. Because we do not all want to look like we did yesterday when I was out in the middle of the thunderstorm, and we looked like we were under the water cannon, even though we weren't. Over here, this is called Riverview. It's by Jim DeStefano. In Chicago, we don't have a lot of underground parking because it's very marshy.